Hey, Margo.
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
How are you?
So happy belated birthday. Saw that it was just your birthday last week.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Yeah,
can't believe I'm only 22. That's crazy.
exactly.
So crazy.
Oh my gosh. And I saw that you were really big into Halloween. So what did you do this year?
Well, it's not that I'm really big into Halloween. It's just my birthday is really close to Halloween.
Right, of
So
course.
it tends to just become one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So
Yeah.
what was your costume this year?
Well, I was a witch. We like to do, have you seen the movie What We Do in the Shadows? Not the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd like to do the unholy mass. What is it called? The
Oh yeah, the
unholy,
unholy mass, right?
the unholy masquerade, the ball. So yeah, and
Great.
basically you just have to show up as anything that's dead or undead,
That's
and
great.
that's been the theme basically since the movies come out. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds really fun though. So in kind of when we were talking about things earlier, we were joking about how we constantly find out about different side effects and different things that
Right.
happen because there are so many different medications that you take with spinal cord. And if you have any other kind of issue that goes along with it, they overlap. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's the strangest thing, and we're constantly figuring things out.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, am I aging? Do I have a mysterious illness? Like, or is it spinal cord related? Or is
Mm.
it medicine related? Or is it all of the above? It's like,
Yeah,
it's
or
so
is it
hard to
just
know.
I'm having a bad day and I'm
Yeah.
not sure?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And the amount of times where I'm kind of going, okay, this is what's happening to me. How do I fix it? You're just troubleshooting your own body all the time.
All the time. I'm
Mhm.
like, no, this is happening, but it's different this time. They're like, Margo, I hear you say this all. I'm like, no, 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 but it's
Yeah.
different. It's different today. No, 14 years
Yeah.
later, it's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said that it's 14 years in December, right?
In December. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I'm curious in terms of when you were injured, how different do you feel like the landscape of care is today versus when you were first injured?
Oh my God, it's so different. So
Really?
different. Like when I was injured back in my day, back in
Mhm.
the old days, uh, like touchscreen phones were just happening,
Right.
which is like an accessible thing that I didn't even realize, would make such a difference. Like I actually do everything from my phone now because
Yeah.
I control my thermostat, I control my lights, all with Alexa or my phone or everything like that. But back then, like I had a
Mhm.
BlackBerry. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna press
Gosh,
these
Barry.
buttons. Yeah, I know, I loved it. And they, like someone in the rehab, um, while I was still like in my hospital stay, made me
Mhm.
this like little stick that I could Velcro to my hand, and I would have to like slowly tap each key.
Oh,
It would take like 30
oh,
minutes to say hello.
I never thought
Yeah.
how awful T9 would be for paralyzed hands.
Oh my God. No, it was, I was like, I, I think I'm just not going to speak to anybody on the
And there was no
phone.
voice text.
Yeah, now all I do is voice text, and
Mm.
I do it so frequently that I am in a public place on the street, and I just have my phone on my lap, and I just have it, and I'm yapping away, and people probably think I'm talking to myself all the time, or
I'm
I'm like
always just
in the
bringing it really
middle.
close to me,
Yeah,
and I'm just like, hey, just finishing up.
no,
And people are just
I
like,
don't
who are
even
you? Are you on the phone?
have the decency to bring it close to me. Like it's on my lap. I don't even pick it up. I'm just screaming, like looking down, like it looks like I'm just screaming at my crotch, like, "Hey, what's going on?" Yeah, no, everything's crazy here, and nobody knows what's going on. Or like
Yeah.
I'm so used to doing it that I'll be in mid conversation with somebody, but then my phone will ring, and I'll answer it with my voice text as I'm talking, and nobody knows if I'm talking to them, talking to my
Mhm.
phone, talking to myself. It's
And then, of course, once you add the wheelchair to that, you're going to get the really weird looks from people,
yeah,
just like, oh God,
they're
what's
just really
happening?
oh this poor girl, this
Yeah.
she's going through so much.
I mean, at least thank goodness you're in New York. So I feel like whenever I'm in New York, people generally don't care what's going on with you.
Exactly. They're
Yeah.
like, we're all crazy.
Are you normally in a manual or a power?
I have a manual with power assisted wheels.
Okay.
I do have a power chair. Well, actually, right now she's gone.
Oh,
She lived her life. She moved on.
oh
But
no.
I know. It was actually emotional to get to say goodbye to her because she was my first wheelchair. I'm in the process of getting a new one. It's gonna take probably. I'll probably get it late next year. Who knows?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
If I,
It's
yeah.
there's no wheelchair vendor that is any better than the other. I tried asking around if any wheelchair vendor is reliable and prompt,
On
and
the East
everyone tells me
Coast,
nope,
no.
they're all like that. They're all
Yeah.
really difficult to deal with.
I will say on the West Coast, I would just shout out to them. In LA, and I think I would like to take credit for spreading the word about them in LA. But
Okay.
Sherman Oaks Medical, yeah, I guess 4 years ago now when I got this manual chair, the easiest. I almost
Really?
like I was like, are you guys just like being nice to me? Like, is this just me? But they're like that with everybody. Like,
Oh wow. I'll
I
link them in the
didn't have.
description for anybody
Oh,
in California. That's
yeah,
great.
no, I didn't have to do anything. They took care of everything. I just said what I wanted, and they gave me suggestions that were actually really helpful. And then, like 3 months later, I just showed up, and everything was perfect.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean that is a level of service I've never seen. I know that when I got my
No,
manual
I was
chair,
like
yeah,
shocked. I started referring people to them, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, they're amazing." And
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I think what's funny is that whenever I speak to people who are non-disabled, they just sort of assume that once you become disabled, the government rolls out the red carpet and gives you
yeah,
everything that you need and helps you with every detail that might trouble
yeah.
you. And I
And
mean, even with
everything you need to
yeah,
know is given to you and written down in bullet points. And no,
yeah, everybody assumes that. And I love that when I see on Instagram people going like, "Oh man, disability must be nice." I'm like, "Do you know how disability works?"
I've
Yeah.
been denied for disability for the last 3 years now, and I'm
What?
like, well, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm on Medicaid. I have home care help, but I can't get SSI. I'm like, I don't know how much more disabled you would like me to get.
Yeah, I think the strangest thing. So at this point, I've been injured for about 2.5 years, and so I've had multiple phone calls from my disability provider who has said, wondering if I'm still disabled.
Oh, every year. I'm doing that
Mhm.
right now. I just had to send the letter
Yeah.
for Medicaid to let them know I'm still disabled.
Yep.
And
Still,
I
still
told them,
here.
I'm like, hey guys, I promise, if one day I'm not, I will call you. I will call
Mhm.
you first.
Oh,
Trust me.
I will skip down to your
Yeah.
office to tell
Actually,
you.
I will run to you and show
Yeah.
you it's a miracle. But no, until
Mhm.
then, I can promise you I'm fully
Mhm.
quadriplegic. Thank you.
Yes, and you don't realize how much of a numbers game it is. You think that the healthcare industry is going to be there to help you and cover whatever you need until something happens. I was shocked when my disability provider reached out to me, I think this was about 6 months ago, and they were going to offer me a lump sum settlement for my disability.
Oh,
And so I did the math to figure out, all right, so what are my monthly disability payments? How much have they offered? And so I assumed that someone did this calculation as to how long they think I'm going to live versus how much they think they should pay out in order to save themselves some money. They allotted for about 4.5 years of disability payments in that lump sum. And then I would not ever be eligible for disability again. Isn't that just the coolest thing
that
you've
I've
ever
never heard. No, I've
mm-hmm.
heard crazy things. Like when I was in LA and I was on Medi-Cal, and the guy
Mm-hmm.
would come every year and make sure I'm still disabled and tell me like what I'm approved for.
Yeah.
And then one day I was like, you know what, screw it. And I was, can I see this paper? And I was like going
Mm-hmm.
down his breakdown of how they calculate what you
Mm-hmm.
get with this is I'll just speak
Mm-hmm.
for Medi-Cal because every state is different. We'll give them
Sure.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say New York is way better than my experience in Florida and California so far.
Okay.
But what they calculated was that I qualify for 45 minutes of eating time, and I thought like, oh, like a day for the week. Like that's how they calculate. Like it's like part of their calculation of how many hours you'll get approved for to get government caretakers. And I'm like, okay, well, is that just like the timer from like when I put the food on the plate to eating it, or is that cooking time? I was like, what does that mean? What does that
That
mean?
is bizarre.
No, like how do they calculate that? Like
I
that was
know.
the
That's what I
craziest
wonder.
thing
Who
I've
is
ever heard.
sitting in their little
Yeah,
office crunching the numbers on those
yeah.
things? Because it's completely inhuman. It doesn't make any sense.
Like I don't get it.
Yeah, I had a similar odd conversation recently. Since it's, I'm only, 2.5 years out, I'm still fighting a lawsuit over my car accident, and that happened in Spain. So I'm having to fight with Spanish lawyers.
Oh,
And they're, putting their Spanish medical experts on this. And clearly, Spanish medical experts, God, I can't speak. Spanish medical experts have never heard of intermittent catheters. And so we tried to explain to them what they are and how many we need for a month. And they came back with, we can't possibly understand how you would ever need that many catheters. And I was like, okay, have you ever counted how many times you pee in a day?
yeah.
Because it's a lot. It's more than you think. And just
And
try
it
to imagine
varies.
paying $6 every time.
Yeah. And it varies
Mhm.
throughout the day. Like I
Yeah.
I have a super pubic catheter
Mhm.
just because like I think you're a lower level quadriplegic than I am, so you probably do have more um
Yeah, I'm a weird
depend
one where I'm like sensory C4 and motor C7. And so my husband has to help me with intermittent catheters, which is, annoying for both of us, but
yeah.
we're still doing it for some reason.
Yeah, that's why I went without the intermittent cathing. I have almost full sensation. I can't feel temperature, which is weird.
Okay. Oh,
That's
wow.
it. So for me, cathing was painful. I was like, I
Oh,
can't
no.
do this. And I have really hyperactive nerves and muscle spasms. And they
Okay.
didn't even suggest to put me on a baclofen pump until 10 years into my injury. And I have friends that were 1 or 2 years in and immediately
Mhm.
got their pump. And I'm like, why did I have
Right.
to suffer a decade?
Because if you have that much sensation, I mean, any kind of nerve damage, that would all be very painful.
Oh, I'm in chronic pain constantly.
Oh,
And like they're like, oh, sorry, there's nothing we can do. We can put you on a bunch of meds that are gonna make you feel
mhm.
awful. And I'm like, cool, thanks. But why was I bringing this up? Oh, about the caffeine.
Mhm.
And like, I started to get like paranoid because they were telling me, and this is in America, like where
Mhm.
well, they at least know what intermittent cathing is. Some
Mhm.
places know, and I was there counting my catheters, and I was like, I like it started giving me anxiety. I was like, if I run out, what happens? So
Yeah.
like the super pubic catheter kind of gave me comfort in that sense
Mhm.
that I can just like whip it out and pee like a man. No, I don't know. I
I
have to say
think
it like
that
that.
is, I think that's sort of an eventuality that every woman with a spinal cord injury faces, is that
Yeah,
at some point it's going to get annoying enough that you are absolutely going to go for the SP2,
yeah,
because you can't time it. I mean, anybody who's even non-disabled
exactly,
can say, of course, I don't just pee every 6 hours on a clock,
exactly,
and yeah,
exactly.
when you
Like
constantly have to worry about that, it's a lot of anxiety.
exactly. And then like if you can't do it yourself, like me, like intermittent caffeine, um, like my concern goes beyond then like, oh, is the bathroom accessible? I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my god, I have to pee. How long is it going to take me to get undressed, to
Yes.
get the catheter ready, everything sterilized, do it, hope to god that I can hold it before it's done, make sure it's done right, then clean up, then get redressed. Like by the time I'm done, it's like 40 minutes just went by.
Right. And if you
Yeah,
happen to be away from home when you start
exactly.
getting, when your blood pressure starts spiking because you really
Yeah,
need to calf, then you're just out of luck. You got to deal with it. And so
yeah,
we've definitely had it happen where we've been out at a brewery or something, and I start to get a little flushed, and I kind of go, huh, okay, so Do I need to stretch? Do I need to move around in my chair a little bit? Is it that? And then you suddenly realize, nope, it's cathing and we have to go. We have to go home now. And so we've definitely been in the car rushing to get home because my flushing is just getting red. And
No,
it's so scary.
It is scary. Actually, I think really the main thing that has ever caused my AD, or that I'm really sensitive to AD, is my bladder. Everything else, it's nothing like the smallest little problem with my bladder and my catheter. Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, I think the statistic is that 85% of the time AD is caused by bladder. Yeah.
Now, and you mentioned the wow, I can't speak either. Brewery, the place that makes the beer.
Yes.
I don't even drink beer now when I go out because
I don't either. I had to stop. It's too the carbonation and everything that it does to your digestive system. I stopped.
It makes me have to pee too much. Yeah, like I love a beer, I love a cider, but I will only do it if I know that like I can empty my catheter. Easily. If not, I'm like, I guess I'll have the liquor.
Yeah, and that's the thing. At least wine and cocktails are not going to hurt me, which is great.
It's true. Like that's I was never a cocktail person, but my bladder forced me to be one.
We adjust.
One thing I do with my suprapubic that makes it easier is I've learned I kind of wrap my suprapubic around and I put one of the small bags and then I can tuck it behind my pants. And that's great. I don't even need a restroom around me for hours at a time sometimes.
I've heard too that what a lot of people do. Oh, and by the way, for anybody watching who is not aware of what what AD is or what intermittent caths versus suprapubic catheters or anything are, I'll make sure to put some information down in the description. But when it comes to suprapubic catheters, I've also heard that what a lot of people do is they don't even attach a bag to it. They just keep that valve shut, and then they will go into the bathroom, attach a bag, empty it. So that way you don't allow your bladder to shrink at all. And as soon as I heard that, I went, oh, that would be a great solution. I'll definitely do that someday.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of people that do that. I know one girl, and that's quadriplegic, who has one, and she was in Japan. She was telling me this. They have like a magnetic, I don't know if it's magnetic, but it's really easy to open as opposed to like the cap that you'll get here is really hard to take out. So yeah, she has it and then she's able to open it and drain it herself. I used to do that, but since I can't like take it out myself and remove the cap, and because I've constantly lived in cities where I'm not sure that I'll have somebody to help me like when I'm out, or if the bathroom will even have space, or will my catheter reach the toilet. I've just settled with keeping the bag on, but yeah, there are a lot of options that make it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that it's so tough to talk about because people who are non-disabled, they have no idea how many options there are.
No.
Very loud bird outside my.
I was wondering that. I was like, oh, what kind of bird is that?
Yes, we have a very active bird feeder right outside the window, and it doesn't matter if it's open or shut. You can hear them through the windows.
No, I love it.
But it's one of those things that people who are non-disabled, they have no idea how many options there are. And there's pluses and minuses to both of them, but it makes people very uncomfortable if you talk about it. Yet non-disabled people talk about going to the bathroom all the time and they make jokes about it and it's fine.
Sure. I've not really been uncomfortable talking about it just because I tend to be an oversharer and I always talk about going to the bathroom. Even before my accident?
I mean, hey, it's better to be comfortable with it. I just struggled because I was always such a private person. And then once spinal cord injury happens, you have no privacy anymore. That's gone.
Exactly. I think that maybe that's what it is. Actually, maybe it's just like the almost 14 years where I'm like, privacy, shame. What is dignity anymore? They're like I can be changing like at a fitting or a photo shoot. They're like, do you want privacy? I'm like, oh, like I'm just like topless, like in the. I'm like, oh, I'm okay with it. They're like, are you sure?
Yeah. And no, it happens all the time. I'll be in a medical research study and they have to put sensors on my butt or something, and they're like, oh, man, you're gonna need to leave the room. I'm like, I mean, I don't really care. At this point, the amount of people who have seen me naked,
I'm always like, Are more people coming in? Where's my audience now?
Yeah, it's very funny where it's just, the idea of privacy and modesty once you get an injury like this.
Yeah,
And I think it's important that we kind of let that go so that way people can
exactly.
have to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, I mean, this is how we live our lives, and there's no reason we should have to be any more private about it than you are.
And everybody does it, and
Mhm.
everybody has issues
Mhm.
with their bowel. No, and I have you've I don't know, the not a weird way to say this, but I have so
Mhm.
many able-bodied friends that are like, God, maybe I should just get a catheter because, like, I don't feel like getting up right now to go pee. And I'm like, okay, okay. And I have so many able-bodied friends, or even like my twin sister who has major IBS. I'm like, Flora, her name's Flora. I'm like, at
Oh,
this point, just get an ostomy because you've had diarrhea for like a week and like I don't want to hear about it anymore.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, there are plenty of people with ulcerative colitis that get an ostomy, and
Yeah.
I had no idea that there are over 1 million people in the US who have an ostomy.
I have an ostomy and I
No
didn't
one
even know
talks
that.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. I thought it was like common knowledge and I was
Mhm.
like dating somebody and I've always I've been upfront with like I have a catheter, I have an ostomy bag and like if they have questions they ask me, but there was this one person that was like I've literally never heard of that before. And I'm like,
Mhm.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I forget. But maybe because I've been
Mhm.
disabled for so long.
Yeah, I do wonder if that makes much of a difference that, I mean, of
Yeah,
course it does, that you were very young when you became disabled. So a
yeah,
lot of this became, just common everyday things for you versus people who become disabled when, later in life, that it's a lot to adjust to. Because when you're
yeah.
younger, I feel like you adjust so much more quickly.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're younger, like yes, like my career path, like I wanted to be a dancer or things like that.
Mhm.
Not that it like hurts any less, but like I was just at the start, so it's not like I like built this career of 50 years that I spent doing and then all of a sudden it's gone and I have to like find myself again. Like I I mean, I'm sure if you would have asked me this question when I was
Oh, no,
20,
of
I would have
course.
been like, "What are you talking about?" But
Right. I mean,
now, yeah.
of course, I was never going to be a professional ballerina, but I danced ballet when I was younger, and I always have loved it. So I can understand. Just I can, it must have been devastating to lose that hope, and that's
Yeah, I like to, yeah, well, yeah.
no, absolutely, it would have been, and that's for nobody can discount that for you having all those plans and then having to grind to a
Exactly.
halt
Like
and start again.
everything that I worked for as like my childhood, like school and dance, like I
Mhm.
as like the moment in my life where things were finally going to start, it ended before I could even start. So either way, it was like I was starting my life at that moment. So I just had to take a gap and reassess. And it's
Right. I mean,
easier to
that
say
is a
now.
very resilient way to look at
Yeah.
it.
Well, I can say I can speak like it, like I'm so resilient now, but I definitely,
Mhm.
I mean, I still cry about it every single night,
Of
but,
course.
and I probably will forever, but looking back, it could have been, worse.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. You can always say that. You can always look at it and go, it could have been
Yeah.
worse because we have met people for whom it is worse. And but it's very difficult having to look at that transition. And I'm so glad that you were able to maintain your career in the fine arts and just sort of pivot to a different area. And that's
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated about how that's worked for you switching over into modeling and acting.
Well, the modeling was never something that I thought, like, I actually never necessarily liked being photographed, especially when I was first injured. Like if I saw you trying to take a picture of me in camera phones back in the old days before
Mhm.
we had the camera phones, they were fairly new at the time.
Mhm.
And so like people were like just like discovering it. And if I saw
Mhm.
somebody try to take a picture, I would have a meltdown. And I mean, I hate to say that now because I would never tell anybody with a disability or newly injured or injured their whole lives or
Mhm.
born with a disability that you're disgusting because you're in a wheelchair. I was just 20 and
Right.
I also at that same moment got really, really bad acne for the first time. I was on medicine that was causing my hair to fall out. And you know, like in the beginning of my injury, I couldn't move my right side at all.
Oh
And
god.
so like it was just a lot for
Mm.
a 20-year old.
Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
I will fully admit it
Yeah.
might sound really strange and vain, but the self-esteem portion of my injury was huge for me. I went from being somebody who always really valued the way I represented myself to the world. I mean, I was
Yeah.
raised by the kind of mom that you would never leave the house without mascara on. And so when I was first injured, I realized, oh my gosh, I look like such a mess. Other people are having to put my hair in a ponytail that looks terrible. And I have a parabelly now and I'm
Yeah.
not able to put on makeup. And
The
so I
quad
mean that body dysmorphia in the beginning is so hard.
it's so hard. Like when I get ready and I don't look at a full length mirror,
Mm-hmm.
I am totally fine. I don't even think about
Mm-hmm.
it. Cause like in the bathroom, which I'm sure you've realized, you
Mm-hmm.
really only, if you're lucky, you get to see like from the chest up.
Right.
If you can even see the mirror. And so like when I'm getting ready and I'm just like doing my makeup in the bathroom and then I go, I'm fine. But if I all of a sudden, even like to this day,
Mm-hmm.
stop to look at the full length mirror,
Yeah.
I start going, I don't know. I don't really want to go. No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what I'm wearing. No,
Well, and
no,
it
I'm
changes day
bloated.
to
Yeah,
day. I mean,
every day.
because we for those of you watching who don't know what a parabelly is, if your abdominal
Or
muscles are not holding up
yeah,
your organs just kind of all slump down to the bottom and suddenly you have a pooch and there's
yeah.
absolutely nothing you can
There's
do about it.
nothing you can
And
do.
it changes in terms of size depending on how bloated you are every day. So that's going to change how every outfit looks on you every day.
Exactly. How
You
every
never know. The amount of
yeah.
times I have changed my blouse or my sweater because I'm just like, oh, no, not that one today.
No, not
Mm-mm.
today. I don't like that how that fabric is sitting on me today. It used to
Mm-hmm.
be such an anxiety inducing thing. It's just a
Yeah.
t-shirt.
But I don't think a lot of people realize how much of our identity and how much of our personality we feel is held in the way we walk, in the way that we enter a room, in the way that we shake someone's hand.
I think that was
It's
the
really
hardest bit.
difficult and
Yeah.
it's very emotional to realize that all of those indicators of who you think you are not there anymore and you don't know how to compensate for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely a hard thing. It's not like I mean, it's not just like entering a room and being like, oh, everyone's staring at me because I'm in a wheelchair. Like, you know, like when you're able bodied, you enter a room, you know, as a dancer, my shoulders back, good posture, like stance, confidence. And then now I can say I still have that and I am
Mm-hmm.
still pretty crazy about posture.
Yeah.
So I do have like a back for my wheelchair that is molded to keep me sitting right. Oh, look at that tail.
Yes.
Uh,
Freya joined the chat.
I knew she would.
Hi, girl.
She had a lot to say. I could tell from the beginning.
Yes, definitely. So,
Yeah.
hi, you're gonna have to stop hitting the table. That's not the best way to handle this.
And maybe there she is.
Hi.
There she is.
Okay.
So cute.
Sorry for Freya's interruption.
No. This was a gift. This was a gift. But yeah, like now like I know how to make myself feel a certain way when I'm getting into I was gonna say walking into a room, but no, you know, like
Well, no, but
rolling up somewhere.
you have to
But
figure out how you want
yeah,
to carry your body now that it's in a different shape, and you
exactly.
know, how do I want to cross my legs? Do I want to keep my hand in front of my abdomen because that
Yeah,
makes me feel better? Or you know, any one of those little things. It's a really strange thing to have to suddenly figure out all over again. How does my body move? I mean, we've been
yeah,
figuring it out since puberty, and now we have to do it again.
and we have to do it again. Yeah, actually, it's funny that you brought up the crossing the legs because if I think about like my first like 3 years of being injured, if I was going out to a bar because I was in my young 20s, now I'm in my almost not so young 30s. Uh, so I don't really care to do that anymore. But I would not go out for a drink unless my legs were crossed. Like I
Yeah,
would leave them
crossing the legs
uncrossed.
somehow gives you a weird level of
Yeah,
confidence. I don't know why.
because you feel like because you the
Yeah.
ableist conditioning in us
Mm-hmm.
is telling us, oh, well, a lady, an attractive, desirable
Right.
female sits with her legs crossed because it's
Right.
sexier in some way. I don't. I guess that
Right.
was my ableist conditioning. But yeah.
No, right. And I think we all have to sort of find that subtle internal bias because we all have it.
Yeah, I mean, even people who are born with disabilities
Mhm.
have this ableistic conditioning in their mind because that's what society told us. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
I think it's difficult too because you come across non-disabled people who continually confirm that for you, which
yeah.
is really hard. And so I was telling somebody in my family the other day that I had a nurse tech when I was in rehab. I had just gotten engaged before my accident. And I remember this very young nurse coming in, poking my leg, asking me if I could feel that. And I said, no, I'm a complete quadriplegic. I'm never going to feel that.
Yeah,
And she went, oh, but what about your wedding? And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm still allowed to get married, even if I can't walk down the
yeah,
aisle. And I just went, oh, okay, mental note to talk to the head nurse about her later.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or like when they are like, can you still have sex? It's
mhm,
mostly men that will ask that. And
yeah,
it's what they should do is redirect it like, can you still have pleasure with it? But the way
right.
that they ask it, like, can you still do it, makes it sound like you get a spinal cord injury or a physical disability, and they like stitch you up, and
Yep,
you've been
that's over.
put
Close it
out to
up.
pasture, out of commission. I'm like, it's still there.
Yep.
Like I have my sensation. I'm capable. Sorry that I'm weight bearing.
Ah,
See,
fine.
that's one ableist thing that like bothers everybody. Everyone's like, all my able-bodied friends and family, Margo, can you just stop fidgeting? I'm like, no. I'm like, my back hurts. I need to stretch.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
if we don't stretch enough, I used to do that all the time, especially when I was newly injured and we were around family or we were out at a restaurant. I wouldn't kind of, get up and stretch a little
yeah. Now
bit
I'm
and
like
do
always,
this and kind of move my legs. And you kind of have to do that every so
yeah.
often. Otherwise, I mean, nobody sits in a chair stock straight and
No,
not moving. And
it
like
kills me.
your butt's gonna fall asleep. I mean, that's just
No, my especially having my sensation. I think on the Asia scale, which I didn't even know about the Asia scale until maybe 8 years after my injury.
wait,
They
wait, wait. They didn't give you an Asia determination upon your injury?
No, they
Oh
just
my
said,
God.
"Oh, you're a C4, C5 incomplete." I was like, "Cool." They're like a
Okay, but they
complete.
didn't explain that to you
They
at
didn't
all.
explain that at all. I'd
Ugh.
never heard of the Asia scale. It wasn't until I did a reading for a screenplay that was called Asia A, and I felt like such an idiot because I was like, this. When
Well,
I
no, I
first,
mean
I was
that's
like, this
we
has nothing
encounter
to do with.
deficiency in care all over. That's not on you.
Yeah, no, and I literally thought the script was about Asia, like the
That's so great.
no,
I mean
it
that's
trust me.
I but that's just wild that they didn't explain to you what
No,
your designation was and why.
no, yeah, nothing. It's only recently, like, I think like a year and a half ago that they scaled me on the Asia on the Asia scale, and
Yeah, I had to explain to our Spanish legal team because apparently in Spain, they don't consider the Asia scale diagnostic,
oh,
even though it's the internationally recognized diagnostic for all spinal cord injuries. They
I
don't
didn't even
consider
know
it
that.
that. They call it a guide.
Oh,
And I went, oh, okay. But there's no other diagnostic tool that exists. What else would you determine it by? And they went, oh, well, we only determine it by your motor level of function. And I went,
okay, so
okay, well, that doesn't
Sarah,
make sense because the US determines it by our sensory level of function.
that's
And they just went,
interesting.
oh, okay, well, we don't.
Wow, I never even thought about that because I was never even told about it in the beginning of my injury. So that's crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, gosh, where did you go to rehab?
Oh, Florida is a hell of a place.
Ooh,
I was injured in
Florida. Okay.
Miami. Jackson Hospital. I have some stories, but maybe that's a different kind of podcast.
Oh
Um,
yeah, you're definitely gonna have to tell me that later. Yeah,
no,
because that's
it's I felt. I mean, I there's some things I still haven't shared with my friends and family because I know that they would just be hurt by it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty bad.
Well, it's the amount of things that happen that we, because we're not doctors ourselves, especially early in our injuries,
Yeah.
we sort of become incredibly knowledgeable about anything
Oh,
medical
yeah.
with our injuries later. But in the beginning, you have no idea.
Yeah. And I was in the hospital for 4 months, and I was on, I don't know, at least 25 different meds, and I didn't know any of them or what they were called, why I was on them. All I knew is that when I started, I wasn't able to talk for the first 3 months because I had my tracheotomy and I was on a ventilator. And so when I started talking, everyone's nightmare. I started like saying no to things. I was like, no, I don't want to take this. And then I noticed, because I was also in the middle of some legal battles, they would start marking, oh, she's denying care. So then I learned really quickly that while I was still inpatient, I had to shut up and say yes to everything because they would be able to use it against me insurance wise, legally, and for all sorts of things. Yeah.
That's awful.
So like until all my legal battles were over, I was just like, I guess I'm gonna be a zombie until then. And then as soon as it was done, I was like, I'm done with this. And I stopped everything. And then once it was like completely detoxed from my body, then I started like learning things like, with my spasticity and my nerve pain and my nausea and like okay, yes, I would like to be on this medicine. I do want to have Zofran all the time, like for nausea, like thing, and I was able to choose, and that made me comfortable with medication. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I do remember that as it's such an impactful moment when you suddenly realize, oh, I can say no. I can take control of this again. Because when you're first injured, you're treated so much like a child because you're ill.
Yeah.
You're not able to take care of things for yourself. And when you finally start feeling well enough that you go, oh, wait, no, I'm an adult. I can make these choices. I remember that moment just hitting me and just going, oh God, that feels good.
Yeah. And I remember also like when I was towards the end of like the rehab portion of my inpatient stay, they would always transfer me. I mean, like adjust me in the chair by pulling me up from the back of my pants. And I was like wearing sweatpants because I'm in the hospital. I just casually asked, like, oh, well, what if I want to wear a dress? And this was almost 14 years ago. And they go, oh, honey, no, you won't get to choose what you wear. You're going to be wearing sweats probably your whole life or whatever's easier for the people taking care of you. And that's when I really got, I mean, I am a Scorpio, if that means anything to anyone. I am also just a stubborn person. And that like really threw me into like, I want to be in control of what I'm wearing all the time. I'm not going to let my disability choose what I wear just because of what that lady said. Yeah.
Well, and that just my heart breaks for you just that was said to you at all, but also just the idea that the way you look or the way you feel no longer matters because you have been injured. That is just so deeply insulting. And for somebody in the healthcare community to tell you that, ugh.
And like I was in a relationship in the beginning of my injury, and I was in my early 20s, and like I said, I was going through my skin changing, my hair was falling out because of these meds, and I was like supposed to possibly get a procedure done that would cause like scarring and like my inner thighs. And I was like, oh, wait, like what kind of like scarring? Like it's going to disfigure like my leg more or something. And the doctor literally said to me, a male doctor was like, what do you care? No one's going to see you there anyway. And I was like, first of all, if I'm intimate with anybody, they cannot care about scars because I'm covered.
God, no. Why would you?
Care, but just the fact that he said that, it made like I actually lost it on him, and then the next thing I knew that he sent a letter, saying that he refuses to do treatment on me unless I get psychiatric help.
That
And I
is
was like,
cool.
no, yeah, no, it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
was
I
like,
mean, and good for you that even at that young of an age, you knew, like, no, just because I'm
yeah,
disabled does not mean that I am not lovable or that my body is not
yeah.
lovable. I mean, that's fantastic that you were able to say that. I mean, I am still
No,
working myself on
I
dealing
mean,
dealing with those feelings.
I can't really say that because after that relationship ended, I basically didn't date throughout my 20s because I convinced myself completely that it would be too selfish of me to date. Like, this is to bring somebody into this life. And I definitely was a bully to myself for many years. I stopped that now. Now I just realized that I don't I just don't really like people that much. So I just date casually. Everyone's like, people can still love you because of your disability. I'm like, no, it's not my disability. It's my personality. It's me.
Well,
Yeah.
honestly, I just look at it as you date casually until you meet that one person
Right.
that it doesn't feel casual with, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it changes. But that's, it's incredibly difficult to try to figure out how that works with a relationship. And
Yeah.
I think actually every single woman I've talked to who deals with paralysis has had those feelings or has had that conversation with their partner where they say, you should go. Oh,
Yeah.
here's
Oh
your,
yeah.
it's, I think it plagues all women with disability.
It does.
I'm sure many men as well.
I'm sure, but I think the hardest is for women. And it
Mm.
does, like, you do, I guess it's also the ableist conditioning. Like, you do
Right.
you are like made to see yourself as less because you don't see yourself
Hmm.
represented anywhere. So you're like, oh,
Right.
I must be less than because I'm treated that way.
Well, and just gender wise as well, even aside from disability, most women are such natural caretakers that when we suddenly need to
Exactly.
be the ones taken care of, we can't imagine what we bring to the table.
Yeah,
And that's
because like we all know, like, men can barely handle having a cold. So like if I'm with a partner and like they're, God forbid, they have a headache and I can't help them, but I'm expecting to be help, like, or I need help to help them, like, I'm like, oh, like, how does that work?
yeah. I mean, I think that's so at this point, I'm trying to think, okay, so how many different categories have we figured out that you have to start over once you get a spinal cord injury?
All of them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any category that you don't have to redefine for yourself. I mean, yeah, I can't honestly can't think of one.
No, like,
Yeah.
even food,
Yes.
like, it's no, everything. And
Mhm.
I will, like, now I'm like totally fine going off on my own, even though I know that I need help. And I just like ask strangers, I'm like, hey, could you get that for me? And they're like, of course. But
Mhm.
like, in the beginning of my injury, I would have died even
Yes.
thinking about doing that.
Mhm.
Never. But now I'm like
Right.
overly comfortable with it that I sometimes have to like take myself back. I'm like, wait,
Mhm.
am
Yeah.
I being
Well,
weird
and
here? Yeah.
I imagine that you've had to learn to be incredibly outspoken about it because if you're going to be working in any fashion in the entertainment industry, if you're going to be, on a movie set or you're going to be on a modeling shoot or something like that, I'm sure there are a lot of things you kind of have to go, okay, we have to stop because I need to go do this or I need to go do that or I'm feeling, a bit of nausea coming on or something like that.
Yeah, well, my nausea thing, yeah, that's like a new thing. But you'd be surprised actually, like being on, well, for modeling. For film, it's a little bit different. Because there's like productions involved with
Mhm.
cameras and framing and setting, and like sometimes like when you're filming, like the eye level, how it looks when you're sitting with someone standing. Like, they've
Mhm.
had to make like little mini platforms for me, so I'm like a little bit more elevated. But in that case, like, I can't really push myself because I will
Mhm.
push myself off the little thing. So I think the few times that I have been on TV episodes, you can't see it, but there's actually somebody underneath my wheelchair
Mhm.
dragging my wheelchair or moving it around in certain scenes. That so
Oh,
so
I
for
never
films,
thought about that, but of course,
me
yeah.
neither. Yeah, for
Wow.
sure. So for film sets, there are more things that I have to be outspoken
Mhm.
about, like, oh, I can't do that, or like, in a scene, like they'll say like, oh, I want you to do this and like look angle this way, or this is your mark. So there's like certain things I have to adjust. But when it comes to modeling, it's actually nothing. They're like if I need help getting dressed, which I do, or it's the very few times I go to set and I don't have somebody like to help me with little things, they're like, no, Margo, we do this for like able-bodied people. Like we dress them, you know, like we do their, you know, like this is completely normal. And I'm like, oh, like I actually feel incredibly comfortable. Like, I mean,
That's great.
I don't want to say that that's everybody's experience. I know that there are some people that have been on sets and they've been treated badly or have had bad experience. But I, myself personally, every time I'm on a set, I feel like a princess, really.
That's actually, I didn't expect that at all. I expected that it would be a lot more difficult for you to speak up for what you need rather than people being sort of, you know, almost overly solicitous for what you need.
In my experience, like it's even surprising for me, to me, because I've heard so many nightmares, but I personally haven't experienced. I've only had really, really great experiences and been with really great people on set, both for film, TV, and for modeling. But I know that not everybody has that. I know that for a fact.
I'm also curious about when it comes to casting and things like that. How do you feel about the idea of somebody who's non-disabled playing somebody who would be in a wheelchair or have some other mobility issue?
For like film and TV? Look, I get that the performing arts is telling stories, and like if we're talking about acting specifically, the art of acting is to be able to become somebody else in whatever sense that is. And I understand, I don't want like able-bodied actors to feel like they can't learn how to embody a disabled character. That's I that's the art of, you know, of the arts. The art of the arts. Right. I get that. But then if we're talking about work and we're talking about casting, we all know life's not fair. I'm not asking for life to be fair. Right. But that said, if disabled actors aren't getting opportunities to audition for roles that are not disabled specific, then able-bodied actors should not be allowed to audition for a specific non-able-bodied role. That said, able-bodied actors should only play disabled roles if it's a role where it's like what Eddie Redmayne had to do playing Stephen Hawking, you know, like
right.
No, like there's no way that like as an actor, I'm very well aware that I will never get casted to play Queen Elizabeth. She was never quadriplegic. True. And like that's the biggest burden, I guess, about being or having a physical disability and being in the arts is no matter what character I'm doing, no matter what, like my story, the character is going to be quadriplegic. You know, I can work on my voice, I can work on my accents, I can, you know, work on the character, but no matter what, the character is paralyzed because I am paralyzed, and that's
that actually is a really good point, and I think it is such a complicated issue. My big gripe with it is when we realize that a non-disabled actor is portraying someone of your injury completely incorrectly. Yeah, that's the thing that makes me insane.
Yeah, no, I will say I did get offered like one of my first TV roles. It was like a non-speaking role, and she was like in a higher like a later stage in her ALS progression. And so they wanted me to be on a breathing tube, which I know what it's like to be on a breathing tube, but I don't know what it's like to have ALS and be, even though I was paralyzed for most of my body for a long time, they kept saying, Margo, we need you to be more still. And like, as a quadriplegic, I'm like, I can't actually be more still because I am trying to balance. And I was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable playing someone more disabled than my disability, just because the character, the role was just somebody, like, she had no real story. She just had ALS. This was a long time ago, so like there really wasn't that much
Right. The character
depth.
wasn't very, very
Exactly.
fleshed out. There wasn't much effort for that back in the day.
So
Yeah.
like for that, it's weird. I will say that one thing that in the industry that I guess it's a wheelchair user, little tiff. I'll keep names out of it because I'll just say it's my opinion. There is a lot of times where it's a wheelchair user written role, but they will end up casting a amputee or someone with a limb difference and put them in a wheelchair because in that case they don't actually have to make anything accessible because
Oh,
yeah. So
yikes. Okay, yeah,
we're
that.
always like, and I have a lot of friends who are amputees and have limb differences, and a lot of them are actors, and they are very talented and very successful. And I've worked with some of them, or I've watched their work, and I love them, and I love what they do. But every time I get an audition, or I see that they went to an amputee, I'm like, those damn amputees taking all the wheelchair roles. And it's just like become like this like inside joke in like the wheelchair acting community. I don't even actually think most people with limb differences know this. Maybe now they will.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, like they
I
take
do
a lot
actually
of
always
parts.
wonder that because I think there is a lot of, I feel like jealousy is a weird word, but I think there is a certain amount of amputee envy among
Oh
quads
yeah,
and paras,
yeah,
which is a weird thing to say. You normally would never say that you feel jealous of another disability group.
exactly. And it's like I'm not minimizing anything that somebody with a limb difference or an amputation deals with or goes through in any ways, even especially in the industry. But like now, like nowadays, I when I first started in the industry like 12 years ago, it didn't matter. Amputee, wheelchair user, we were all in the same lot, and we were all nothing.
Yeah.
We just did what.
Well, yeah, and to cast somebody uh, of who has less mobility issues, so that you don't have to deal with what it might
Yeah,
require for the actual character.
and
That
like at one time, oh, it was actually the ALS character. The director chose me, wanted me, and then when he sorry, weight shifting. When the director was like, okay, I pick her, the producers, he actually told me this on the side the day of filming. He goes, production didn't want you because they said you're too pretty to be in a wheelchair. Sorry, we've all heard this before. That it wouldn't be believable that people watching the show are going to think that we hired an able-bodied person to play your part. So the compromise that the director had to make was to fire the guy that was playing my husband and hire what they considered an uglier gentleman to make it more believable.
oh that is
Yeah,
just
I was
oh
like, God, that's ugly. Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
I mean that's for them to actually make an entire casting change because
yeah.
they thought they needed to make it more realistic.
Make it more realistic. And luckily, the director was such a sweetheart and an advocate. And he was like, "No, we're gonna get this. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna get this done. I want her in this scene." So thank God there are a lot of good people, but it's yeah, that happens a lot. Like I think my first shoot ever, I think I was like the second wheelchair user for Normstrom's. This was like 13 years ago. To be in their catalog, and I remember my friend who's always on Reddit saw that I was on Reddit, and everyone's like, "No, they got a regular model and put them in a chair." And then some people were like, "No, no, no! Look at her fingers, look at her hands. She's definitely disabled. I have a quadriplegic friend who," and it was just like this battle on Reddit to like diagnose if I was disabled or not. And I was like
How
if I was
incredibly strange for
paraplegic,
you to see that happening
yeah,
online about you. I mean, that's
yeah.
I can't imagine how that must feel. That must be so surreal.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was like, and then it got to me because this was still really early on in my injury. I was like, damn, my hands gave it away. So then I went on this whole thing like, how do I make my quad paws look more normal, quote normal. I was like, because they're like that. This is the only thing that people can see that makes me look disabled. Not my wheelchair, not my disability aid, my mobility
Because
aid,
otherwise, I mean,
but my hands.
Would never know.
You would never know. With the wheelchair, you would never even guess. But the hands, they see the hands and they're like, wow, she's really disabled. And I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, I am.
Yeah, and that's those little moments where you have that thought to yourself and you go, ooh, still got a little bit of ableism left over in there that I haven't picked out yet.
No, like still to this day, like when I'm on set and like I'm doing things, they're like, oh well, we want you to do it how you would do it authentically. And there's still like a part of me that I'm like, no.
No, like really?
I'm like,
sure.
I don't want you to see how I hold this or how I do this. Like, can you just like cut my hands? I don't say that out loud. This is my internal dialogue.
Right.
And I do it, or sometimes I like pretend to do it just because I know the scene will be short enough, and I'm like, I think I can hide my quad paws a little bit more here. Yeah, so I mean, you know, almost 14 years in and I'm still having those internal battles with myself.
Yeah, and it's I always have that little bit of anxiety when somebody goes out to reach to shake my hand.
Oh my god, it's the worst.
Shaking hands makes me so nervous because I imagine that it's way worse for them than it is for me, and I don't know if it is.
That's the part that gives me the heebie-jeebies is looking at their reaction. I'm like, oh god, here we go, and I just stare at them. I'm like, oh, I can tell this one's not gonna handle it well.
Yeah, and that one plus if anyone tries to hand me anything, and then I go
all the time.
Now I have the issue of, can I get my hand around it? Can I actually lean forward and balance enough to get this? And am I going to drop it immediately?
Yeah, no, now I'm just like, I don't know. You have to give it to me. And I've gotten really good at not showing that I'm actually a C4 quad. And I think I did a disservice for myself because every now and then, like, especially when we were in our 20s, like my sister would be like, oh, like what, or like my family, my mom, or would just get frustrated, like, oh, like what are you, why are you doing this? I'm like, oh my, like, don't you like, can't you realize like actually sitting here and balancing is taking so much effort for me, and they have to be like, oh, okay, because I like I make it look easy. No, not like that, but
and also anyone who has not had a spinal cord injury is not going to understand that just sitting up, just balancing, just being here, it zaps my energy twice as fast as anybody else.
It's so hard. Like just like here talking to you, like I'm out of breath. And I've been injured for a long time. I feel fine. I'm not nauseous right now. I know I was earlier. My blood pressure is fine. It's just the effort of like I said, I was on a ventilator for a long time. I did have damage to my lungs. My left lung will never be normal. Just breathing when I'm sitting is so difficult. And
if you could see me right now, I have my feet up in my wheelchair right now, just so that my
was gonna do that. Equal. Yeah, I'm wearing slippers, but I was like, maybe I'll put my feet up. But then I was like, I don't know where to put the tripod. Yeah, it was a thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like we could sit and talk about this for ages.
A lot of things we can go.
And unfortunately, because daylight savings time is the worst thing ever, it's starting to get dark in my house, even though it's barely 4 o'clock. But I have loved so much talking to you. I'm so glad that you live near me. We have got to meet up. All right, well, thank you so much. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week.
You too.
And we'll talk again soon.
And give my love to Fran.
Definitely. Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye.